Someone drove a semi-truck through my mailbox at 2 in the morning. I did not hear it. I walked outside around 6:43 with my coffee, still half asleep, and just stood there trying to figure out what I was looking at. The post was bent in half. Pieces of red metal were everywhere. The mailbox door had landed in my flower bed, completely flat. This was not some drunk driver clipping a turn. Whatever hit my mailbox went straight through it. The tire marks were wide, like commercial truck wide. And they led right back toward the gated entrance of Ridgecrest Estates, the subdivision at the end of my street. Yeah, someone did this on purpose. And honestly, I already had a pretty good idea who was behind it. Let me back up a little. My house sits at the mouth of this subdivision called Ridgecrest Estates. I have owned it for 11 years. Bought it from the original developer before the neighborhood was even finished. And because I bought it before the HOA existed, my property was never included in the covenant. I am not in the HOA. Never was. My neighbors are. Every single one of them signed the paperwork when they moved in. They have got rules about lawn height, fence colors, how many cars you can park in your driveway, where your trash cans go on Tuesdays. They pay dues. They go to meetings. They follow the rules. I do not have to do any of that. And for a long time, nobody cared. I kept my place clean, mowed my lawn, painted my fence. I never gave anyone a reason to complain. Then about 7 months ago, a woman named Deborah Kinney became president of the Ridgecrest HOA board. And from that point on, she decided I was her project. It started with letters. The first few were polite. We would love for you to join the community covenant. Then they got firmer. Your property's appearance is affecting neighborhood values. Then they turned into straight-up demands, quoting bylaws that had nothing to do with me. I ignored every single one. And now here I was, standing in my wrecked yard in a bathrobe, looking at what used to be my mailbox, thinking that maybe Deborah had finally decided if the rules could not reach me, something bigger would. I set the coffee down and went back inside. Not to call the police. Not yet. First, I needed to document everything. I grabbed my phone and spent about 20 minutes taking pictures of everything. The tire marks from different angles. The bent post. The metal pieces all over the lawn. The crushed door in the flower bed. I even got a tape measure from the garage and measured the tire tracks. 18 inches across. That is not a car. That is not even a big SUV. That is a semi or something close to it. I shot a video too, walking the whole path of the tracks, saying the time and date out loud as I went. Then I uploaded all of it to a cloud folder, because I have learned the hard way that phones die and files disappear exactly when you need them. Only after all that did I call the sheriff's non-emergency line. The deputy showed up around 8:30. Nice enough guy, but you could tell he was not too concerned. He walked the tracks, wrote a few things down, and told me it was probably someone who made a bad turn in the dark. Happens more than you would think, he said. Big rigs end up on residential streets all the time. I told him there is no reason for a semi to be on this street. It dead ends into a gated subdivision. The only trucks that come down here are delivery vehicles, and they do not show up at 2 in the morning. He shrugged. Could have been using GPS. Bad route. I asked about the cameras at the gate entrance. He said I would have to ask the HOA about that. Of course. He gave me a case number, told me to call my insurance, and left. So I am standing in my driveway now, looking down the road toward the Ridgecrest gate. There is this decorative stone arch at the entrance with a keypad and a gate arm. And on the left pillar, there is a camera. I would seen it 100 times, but never really thought about it. Now I was definitely thinking about it. If a semi came down this road last night, it passed that camera. And if it went through that gate, someone inside the HOA let it in. I pulled out my phone and sent an email to the Ridgecrest HOA general inbox. Kept it short and simple. My mailbox was destroyed overnight by what looks like a commercial vehicle. Sheriff's report filed. I am requesting gate camera footage from last night between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Please respond at your earliest convenience. Hit send. Went inside to shower. I figured I would get a reply in a day or two. Maybe a form response, maybe nothing. What I got instead, about 3 hours later, was a knock on my front door. I opened the door, and there is this guy I have never seen before. Mid-50s, khaki pants, polo shirt with some little logo on it. He has got a clipboard and one of those smiles that is trying really hard to look friendly. Good morning. Are you the homeowner? I am. My name's Gerald Pratt. I am the property manager contracted by the Ridgecrest Estates HOA. He looked past me at the house like he was sizing it up. I understand there was some damage to your mailbox last night. There was. I sent an email about the gate camera footage. Right, that is actually why I am here. He shifted the clipboard to his other hand. Unfortunately, the camera system was undergoing a scheduled update last night. The footage from around midnight to 5 a.m. was not recorded. I just let that hang there for a second. A scheduled update. Yes, sir. Happens from time to time. Bad timing, I know. Is there a service ticket for this update? Any kind of documentation? Something sent to the board? His smile did not change, but something behind it did. I would have to check with our IT vendor on that. But I wanted to come by personally and let you know since you had asked. Here is the thing. He could have sent an email. He could have called. Instead, he drove to my house within 3 hours on a Wednesday morning to deliver this news face to face. People do that for two reasons. Either they are actually being nice, or they want to watch how you react. I appreciate you coming by, Gerald, I said. I will follow up with the sheriff's office and let them know the footage is not available. They might want to talk to your IT vendor directly. His smile got a little thinner. I am sure that will not be necessary. These things usually sort themselves out. A semi-truck destroyed my mailbox. That does not sort itself out. He nodded, clicked his pen a couple times against the clipboard, and took a step back. Well, if you need anything, the HOA office is open weekdays 9 to 4. I am not a member of the Herald. Right. Another pen click. Right, I know that. Just, as a courtesy. He walked back to his car and pulled away toward the gate. I went inside, sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, and started pulling up property records on the county assessor's website. Not to check my own status. I already knew exactly where I stood. But I wanted to understand something. If the camera footage was conveniently gone, and the property manager showed up this fast, then someone on that board already knew what happened last night, and they were already trying to make sure I could not prove it. I spent the rest of that day doing something I had not done in years. I sat down and read the Ridgecrest Estates CC&Rs front to back. All 47 pages, not because they applied to me. They did not. But I wanted to understand how Deborah's little machine worked, and honestly, it was exactly what you would expect. Fines for unapproved landscaping. Fines for painting your house the wrong color. Fines for leaving a work truck in your own driveway for more than 2 days. Page after page of rules that sound reasonable until you realize how much power they hand to whoever's in charge. But then I hit page 31, and I found something interesting. Section 9(4). It said the board could take corrective action on any property that impacts the look or value of the community, including properties adjacent to, but not within the covenant boundary, quote, to the extent permitted by law. To the extent permitted by law. That phrase is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Because the law does not permit it at all. An HOA cannot enforce its rules on a non-member property. That is not a grey area. That is settled. But the clause told me a lot about how Deborah thinks. She believed, or wanted to believe, that living next to her neighborhood was enough to put you under her control. I took a screenshot and saved it. Then I started going through the HOA meeting minutes. They were posted on the community website, residents only, but Gerald had casually dropped a login during his visit. The kind of thing someone does when they are trying to seem helpful without thinking about what they are giving away. The minutes from the last 6 months told me everything. October. Deborah brought up non-compliant adjacent properties for the first time. No names. Board voted to send a letter. November. She called my property, and I saw that undermines property values. One board member asked if they actually had authority over it. Deborah said she would check with their attorney. December. Attorney's answer got one sentence in the minutes. Counsel advises limited direct action, but recommends continued communication. January. Deborah proposed hiring a property management company to, and I am quoting here, interface with adjacent landowners. Board approved a 6-month contract with Pratt Property Solutions. Gerald. February. Motion passed to explore infrastructure improvements near the community entrance. 4-1 vote. March. Last month. And here is where it got real. A line item in the budget for $2,200, paid to a company called D&L Hauling, listed under Entrance Improvement Logistics. I looked up D&L Hauling. Small local company. Flatbeds, dump trucks, semi-trucks. I closed the laptop and sat back. They did not just destroy my mailbox. They budgeted for it. I did not sleep well that night. Not because I was scared or anything. I was angry. And anger at 2 in the morning does not help anyone. It just goes in circles. So I got up, made some tea, sat on the back porch in the dark, and let myself think. By morning I had a plan. Nothing dramatic. No revenge fantasy. Just a series of careful, boring, documented steps that would make it really hard for anyone to pretend none of this happened. First thing. I needed cameras. I would never bothered with a security system before. Quiet street, house set back from the road, never had a reason. Now I had a reason. I drove to the hardware store and bought a 4-camera wired system with night vision and a local hard drive. Nothing fancy. Not cloud-based. I wanted footage that lived in my house, on a drive I could touch, with timestamps I could verify myself. By that afternoon, I had 1 camera on the front yard covering the mailbox area, 1 on the driveway, 1 on the side of the house facing the road toward the gate, and 1 on the back porch. Ran the cables through the attic myself. Recorder went in the hall closet. Done. Next, I needed a paper trail that went beyond the sheriff's report. I wrote a formal letter to the Ridgecrest HOA board. Not an email this time. A certified letter with return receipt. I stated the facts. Mailbox destroyed. Tire marks consistent with a commercial vehicle. Gate camera footage requested and denied due to a supposed system update. I asked for written confirmation of that update, including the vendor name, service date, and any documentation. Then I added something else. I mentioned that I would review the HOA's budget and found a payment to D&L Hauling. I asked what services they would provided and whether any of those services involved vehicle access to the road near my property. I did not accuse anyone. I did not mention Deborah by name. I just asked questions. Simple, specific, reasonable questions that would be very hard to ignore and very uncomfortable to answer honestly. Mailed it Thursday. Last step. This one just needed patience. I called my insurance company and filed a claim. They sent an adjuster out the following Monday. He took his own photos, measured the tire tracks separately, and wrote in his report that the damage was consistent with a large commercial vehicle, not a passenger car. That report did not belong to the HOA. Did not belong to the sheriff. It was mine. So now I had 3 separate records. Sheriff's report, insurance assessment, my own documentation. Whatever was coming next, I was ready. The certified letter came back, signed about 10 days later. Someone at the HOA office had accepted it. But no response. No call. No email. No Gerald showing up with his clipboard. Just silence. And look, I have dealt with enough difficult people to know what silence means in a situation like this. It means someone talked to a lawyer. It means they were told to stop communicating with me. Which was fine. Silence is still a response. It told me they were worried enough to shut up, and that was actually more useful than anything they could have said. What I did not expect was what happened next. I came home from the grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon and found a notice taped to my front door. Not mailed. Not left in the mailbox. Taped directly to the door with packing tape, like a parking ticket on a windshield. Ridgecrest Estates letterhead. Bold print at the top. Notice of non-compliance. The letter said my property was violating 3 community standards. 1. My fence was the wrong color. It is wood, stained dark brown, apparently not on their approved list. 2. My front yard had unapproved decorative elements, which I am guessing meant the ceramic planters my wife put by the walkway 6 years ago. And 3. My mailbox, or the lack of one, was described as an unresolved aesthetic deficiency visible from the community entrance. Let me say that again. They were citing me for not having a mailbox. The mailbox they destroyed. At the bottom, there was a deadline. 14 days to fix everything or face additional corrective measures as outlined in Section 9(4) of the Community Covenant. Section 9(4). The same clause I would already flagged. The one that pretends the HOA has authority over properties that are not in the HOA. I read the letter twice. folded it, slid it into a plastic sleeve, and put it in the file I would been building. Took a picture of the tape residue on the door, checked my cameras and found footage from 1:47 p.m. of a woman in sunglasses and a white cardigan walking up to my door, pressing the notice on and leaving without knocking. I did not recognize her. But I saved the clip. That evening I sat down and sent 2 emails. First one went to the county clerk's office. I requested the full recorded plat map for the Ridgecrest subdivision, including the legal boundary lines for every lot inside and outside the covenant. Second one went to a real estate attorney I would worked with years ago on an easement issue. His name was Martin Cahill. Expensive. Thorough. The kind of lawyer who never raises his voice because he does not need to. Martin, I wrote. I have got a situation. Are you free this week? He replied within the hour. Martin's office was in this converted old house on the east side of town. No fancy sign out front. Creaky floors. Bookshelves everywhere. The kind of place where actual work gets done. I brought everything. Photos. Insurance report. Sheriff's case number. The certified letter and signed receipt. The non-compliance notice in its plastic sleeve. The screenshot of section 9(4). The meeting minutes. The D&L hauling budget line. And the camera footage of the woman taping the notice to my door. Martin went through all of it without saying much. That is how he works. He reads first, talks after. I have always liked that about him. When he finished, he leaned back and tapped his pen against the desk. They have made this really easy for you, he said. How so? 3 ways. First, that non-compliance notice. They sent an enforcement action to a property that is not under their jurisdiction. That is not just wrong, it is actionable. If they follow through on it, it is harassment. If they actually do anything to your property, it is trespass. He put the notice down and picked up the budget printout. Second, the D&L hauling payment. If that company drove a vehicle on the road next to your lot and caused property damage, the HOA has civil liability because they are the ones who hired and paid for it. Even if they say the work had nothing to do with your mailbox, the timing and the location are going to be really hard to explain away. And third? The camera footage. They told you it was gone because of a system update. Either that is true, and they can produce the service record to prove it, or it is not true, and they made a false statement in response to a formal request connected to a sheriff's report. He paused. Either way, they lose. I sat with that for a second. So what do I do? Nothing yet. He closed the folder and folded his hands over it. Right now you have got a strong position but no active dispute. They have not actually fined you. They have only threatened. They have not touched your property again. They have only taped a letter to your door. If you make the first move now, it becomes your action. I would rather it be theirs. You want me to wait? I want them to do something stupid. And based on everything I have seen here, I really do not think we will be waiting long. He was right about that. But not in the way either of us expected. 9 days after the non-compliance notice, I came home from work and found a crew on my property. Not near it. On it. 2 guys in reflective vests standing in my front yard with a measuring wheel and a can of orange spray paint. 3 small flags already stuck in the ground along the edge of my lawn near the road. A white pickup parked on the street with the tailgate down, full of wooden stakes and surveying equipment. I pulled into the driveway, shut off the engine, and got out. Can I help you? The taller guy looked up. He seemed surprised to see me, which told me something right away. They were not expecting the homeowner to be home. We are marking the setback line for the community entrance improvement project, he said. Road widening survey. On whose authority? He blinked. The HOA contracted us. We have got a work order. Can I see it? He hesitated, then walked over to the truck and pulled a folded sheet off a clipboard. I read it standing right there in my own driveway. Work order issued by Pratt Property Solutions on behalf of Ridgecrest Estates HOA. Described the job as a preliminary survey for road widening and entrance beautification along Ridgecrest Lane. The scope included marking the road setback, utility easement, and, here is the part that got me, encroachment boundaries on the adjacent lot, my lot. That word, encroachment, like I was the one intruding on them. Who told you this property is part of the HOA? I asked. The guy shrugged. We just go where the work order says. I understand. But this is private property, and you are not authorized to be here. He looked at his partner. His partner looked at the flags in the ground. Sir, we are just doing our job. I get that. And I am telling you clearly and respectfully, this lot is not part of the Ridgecrest Covenant. You need to pull those flags and leave. There was a pause. The tall guy pulled out his phone, stepped away, and made a call. I caught bits of it. Homeowners here. Pause. Says it is not HOA property. Longer pause. All right. Yeah. Okay. He came back and nodded to his partner. They pulled the flags, loaded the measuring wheel, and drove off without saying anything else. I stood in the yard, looking at the 3 little holes where the flags had been, and the 6-foot line of orange spray paint they would already put across my grass. I took photos, checked the cameras, saved everything. Then I called Martin. They just sent surveyors onto my property, I said, with a work order. Short silence. Good, he said. Now we move. Martin filed 2 things the next morning. First was a cease and desist letter, addressed to the Ridgecrest Estates HOA Board, Pratt Property Solutions, and Deborah Kinney personally. It was straightforward. My property is not part of the HOA. No covenant, easement, ordinance gives the HOA any authority over my lot. The non-compliance notice was baseless. The survey was trespass. Any further action against my property, physical, administrative, whatever, would be treated as willful harassment and dealt with accordingly. Second was a formal complaint to the County Code Enforcement Office. Wanted to know if the HOA had gotten permits for any of their road widening or entrance improvement plans on the public road next to my property. He would already checked. They had not. No permit. No variance request. No traffic study. Nothing. They were planning to alter a county road and had not asked a single person for permission. This is where they usually get a real lawyer, Martin told me that afternoon. Up to now they have been running on assumptions, assuming you would not push back, assuming their property manager could handle it. That is done. What if they ignore the cease and desist? Then every single thing they do after receiving it becomes willful. That completely changes the conversation around damages. Right now they could maybe argue ignorance. After this letter, they cannot. I asked what he thought Deborah would do. Double down. People like her do not hear a cease and desist as a warning. They hear it as someone picking a fight. 3 days went by. Nothing. Then on the 4th day, I got a response. Not from a lawyer. Not from Gerald. From Deborah herself. It came in my temporary mailbox. The plastic one I would mount it on a wooden post while the insurance claim was still going. Hand-addressed envelope. No return address. But the handwriting matched the signature on the non-compliance notice. Inside was one typed page. It started with, "Dear neighbor." It talked about how the HOA was working to improve the community for everyone, including adjacent homeowners, how the entrance project would benefit the whole area, how the board was disappointed by my adversarial approach and my decision to involve attorneys instead of engaging in good faith dialogue. And then came the line that told me everything I needed to know. The board has voted unanimously to proceed with the entrance improvement project as planned, and we expect full cooperation from all affected property owners. Unanimously, as planned. Full cooperation. She would read the cease and desist, and she completely ignored it. I forwarded the letter to Martin. His reply was 3 words. Perfect, thank you. For the next 2 weeks, nothing happened on the surface. No crews. No letters. No one knocking on my door. From the outside it probably looked like things had calmed down. They had not. Martin was working. Quietly, carefully, the way he always does. He filed a pre-litigation discovery request to get the HOA's financial records, using the trespass and unpermitted roadwork as grounds. He also submitted a public records request to the county for any communications between the HOA and the Municipal Roads Department. The financial records came back first. And they were something. The D&L hauling payment was not a one-time thing. There were 3 payments over 2 months, $6,800 total. The first one was dated 5 weeks before my mailbox was hit. The invoices were vague. Site preparation. Material transport. Access clearance. But the dates told the real story. The biggest payment, $3,200, went through 2 days after my mailbox was destroyed. Martin also found something I was not expecting. A separate charge buried in the HOA's legal budget. $4,000 paid to a firm called Kendrick and Associates. I did not know the name. Martin did. Land use firm, he said. They specialize in stuff adjacent to eminent domain, boundary disputes, easement expansion. Why would the HOA hire an eminent domain firm? Because they are not just trying to mess with you. They are trying to build a legal basis to take part of your property. I sat there in Martin's office and let that sink in. They want my land. They want the strip along the road. Probably 15-20 feet of your frontage. Enough to widen the entrance, put in landscaping, maybe a monument sign. Makes the subdivision look nicer. Raises property values inside the gate. And my property value? Goes down. You lose frontage, setback, curb appeal, plus the precedent it sets. Can they actually do this? Not without your consent or a government action. An HOA does not have eminent domain power. They cannot condemn your land. But what they can do is convince the county to start a road widening project and then offer to pay for it. County takes the land, HOA gets what it wants, and technically their hands are clean. Is that what is happening? Martin pulled out the public records results. 3 emails between Deborah Kinney and a county planning commissioner named Ray Alderman. The first one was sent 4 months ago. The subject line read, Ridgecrest Entrance, Road Improvement Partnership Proposal. She had not just gone around me. She had gone above me. I read the emails that night at my kitchen table. The first one was friendly, almost chatty. Deborah introduced herself as the HOA president and pitched this community-driven initiative to improve the Ridgecrest entrance. She talked about safety concerns. The narrow road. No turning lane. A blind curve near my property. She offered to fund the whole thing if the county would start the road widening process. She never said my name, never mentioned my property directly, but every single detail she described, the curve, the frontage, the road width, pointed right at my lot. The second email came 3 weeks later. Follow-up. She mentioned a phone call with Alderman's office and thanked his staff for being receptive. She attached a site plan. I could not see the actual attachment in the records request, but the file name was listed. Ridgecrest Entrance Improvement V2, version 2. Meaning there was already a version 1. The third email was the most recent. Sent 6 days before my mailbox was destroyed. Deborah asked about the timeline for a preliminary assessment and whether the county had any concerns. Alderman's reply was short. Said the proposal had been forwarded to the roads department for review. A site assessment could be scheduled when resources were available. That was it. No commitment, no approval. Just a bureaucratic maybe. But Deborah had treated it like a green light. I put the papers down and just sat there for a while. This was not a neighborhood argument anymore. This was not about a mailbox or a fence color or some planters in my yard. Deborah Kinney was trying to get the government to take part of my land. She was using HOA money to fund it, county contacts to push it forward, and intimidation to soften me up before I figured out what was happening. The mailbox was not an accident. It was not revenge either. It was preparation. Destroy the mailbox. Cite the damage as an eyesore. Use the eyesore to justify the improvement project. Fold my property into the plan before I knew what was going on. If I had not read those meeting minutes. If I had not found the hauling payments. If I had not asked Martin to pull the public records. One day I would just be standing here watching a county crew carve off the front of my lot while Deborah smiled from behind the gate. I picked up the phone and called Martin. It was after 9. He answered on the second ring. I have read everything, I said. What is our next move? We go to the county board meeting, he said, and we make sure Deborah's little proposal dies in public. The county board of commissioners met every first and third Thursday. Next one was 8 days out. Martin told me to prepare, but keep it tight. You will get 3 minutes during public comment, he said. Maybe 5 if the chair's in a good mood. That is not enough to tell the whole story. So do not try. Pick your 3 strongest points and land them clean. I spent the week putting everything into a binder. Not for the presentation itself, but for the record. Martin submitted a formal written statement to the board ahead of the meeting with all the supporting documents. Financial records, public records emails, trespass evidence. The cease and desist. Insurance adjuster's report. Everything indexed. Everything cited. The night before, I sat on the back porch and went through what I was going to say. Not memorized word for word, I did not want it to sound rehearsed. But I wanted the structure solid. 3 points. No emotion. Just facts. The meeting was at the county administration building. Flat brick building, fluorescent lights, rows of plastic chairs. About half full when I walked in. And there in the second row, left side, was Deborah Kinney. Dressed like she was going to church, navy blazer. Pearl earrings, leather folder on her lap. Gerald was next to her. And next to him, some guy in a grey suit I did not know. Probably the lawyer from Kendrick and Associates. She saw me. We made eye contact for maybe 2 seconds. She looked away first. The meeting started with the usual stuff. Budget items. A zoning thing for a gas station. A drainage complaint from the south side of the county. Then the chair opened public comment. Martin had told me to let Deborah speak first if she was going to. Let her set up the frame, he said. Then take it apart. She stood up when they got to agenda item 7. Community road improvement proposals. Walked to the mic, introduced herself, and gave this polished little 3-minute pitch about the Ridgecrest entrance, community safety, the HOA's willingness to fund improvements for the whole area. She was good. I will give her that. Composed. Sounded completely reasonable. She used words like partnership and investment and shared benefit. She did not mention me or my property once. A few people in the audience were nodding along. Then the chair asked for additional comment. I stood up. Room went quiet. Deborah's lawyer leaned over and whispered something to Gerald. Gerald's pen stopped moving. I walked to the mic, said my name, gave my address. I am the adjacent property owner, I said, and I would like the board to know what this project actually involves. I kept my voice steady. No anger. No sarcasm. Just a guy at a microphone telling it like it is. 3 months ago, my mailbox was destroyed overnight by a commercial vehicle. The tire marks were consistent with a semi-truck. I filed a sheriff's report and an insurance claim. When I asked the HOA for gate camera footage, they told me the system was down for a scheduled update. They have never provided a service record to back that up. I gave the room a second to sit with that. I then reviewed the HOA's financial records. I found 3 payments totaling $6,800 to a company called D&L Hauling. They are a local outfit that operates semi-trucks. The biggest payment, $3,200, was processed 2 days after my mailbox was destroyed. There was a murmur. Not loud, but it moved through the room. After the mailbox was destroyed, the HOA sent a non-compliance notice to my property, citing the missing mailbox as a violation. My property is not part of the HOA covenant. It never has been. The recorded plat map at the county clerk's office confirms this. I looked at the commissioners. 3 of them were writing. The other 2 were watching me. The chair had taken his glasses off and was holding them loosely, which in my experience means someone's actually paying attention. A week after the notice, the HOA sent a survey crew onto my property without my permission to mark what they called encroachment boundaries. My attorney sent a cease and desist. The HOA responded with a letter saying they intended to proceed with the entrance project as planned and expected. Their word, full cooperation. I set up the last point carefully. I am not here to oppose road improvements. If the county decides a road widening project serves a real public interest, that is your call. But I want this board to understand that the proposal in front of you was not started for public safety. It was started by an HOA president who has spent 7 months trying to control a property she has no authority over. The road project is just the tool. My land is the target. Quiet. I said thank you and went back to my seat. Nobody moved for about 10 seconds. Then the chair put his glasses on and looked down at the written statement Martin had submitted. I would like to note for the record, he said, that we have received a formal submission from the adjacent property owner's attorney with supporting documentation. I am going to recommend this item be tabled pending independent review by the county attorney's office. Motion passed. 4-1. Deborah did not say another word for the rest of the meeting, but I could feel her staring at me the whole time. The drive home was quiet. No radio, just the road and my thoughts. I had not won anything yet. Tabling the item did not kill it, it just paused it. The county attorney would go through Martin's submission, look at the emails, review the proposal, and make a recommendation. That could take weeks. And Deborah would still be Deborah during those weeks. But something had shifted. I felt it in the room. After I spoke, the commissioners were not looking at her the same way. All those nice words she would use, partnership, shared benefit, investment, they hit different once people had the full picture. Martin called me the next morning. "Heard from the county attorney's office already," he said. "They are taking it seriously. They want the full financial records and all the emails between Kinney and Commissioner Alderman." That was quick. County officials do not love finding out someone's been working a back channel with one of their commissioners to grab private land. Makes them look bad. And there is an election in 9 months. What about Alderman? Already distancing himself, his office put out a statement saying the proposal was under standard review and no commitments had been made. Textbook cover move. I asked what he thought Deborah would do next. The smart thing would be to go quiet, pull back, let her lawyers handle it. He paused. But she is not going to do that. She has been running this neighborhood like her own little kingdom for 7 months. Someone just stood up in a public meeting and basically called her a bully with a budget. That is not something people like her absorb and adjust to. That is something they retaliate against. Right again. 4 days after the board meeting, my neighbor Phil Dawson rang my doorbell. Phil lives 2 doors down inside the HOA. Retired guy. Keeps to himself. We would talked maybe a dozen times in 11 years. Friendly enough. Waves when he checks the mail. He looked uncomfortable standing on my porch. "Thought you should know something," he said. "There was a special board meeting last night. Closed session. Deborah called it." "About what?" Phil rubbed the back of his neck. "She is pushing for a special assessment. $1,500 per household. She is telling everyone it is for legal fees to fight what she is calling a frivolous complaint against the HOA." He looked at me like he was expecting me to blow up. I did not. I was already taking mental notes. "She is also telling people," Phil said quietly, "that you are the reason their dues are going up." That was smart. I will give Deborah that much. She could not beat me in court. She could not take my land without the county's help. And the county had just put her whole project on hold. So she did what people with a little bit of power do when they are backed into a corner. She turned the crowd against me. $1,500 is real money. For someone like Phil on a fixed income, that hurts. For a young family with a mortgage, that is a car payment. And Deborah was not presenting it as a consequence of her own mess. She was framing it as my fault. The difficult neighbor. The outsider who lawyered up instead of being reasonable. Within a week, I could feel it. The woman across the street stopped waving. A couple I used to chat with on their evening walks started crossing to the other side of the road when they passed my house. Someone left an unsigned note in my temporary mailbox. "Thanks for costing us $1,500. I am not going to pretend that did not bother me. I would lived here 11 years. Never had a problem with anyone. I would lend people tools, taken in packages, help jump cars on cold mornings. And now I was the bad guy because a woman most of them barely knew told them I was. But I did not respond to any of it. Not the cold shoulders, not the note, not the looks from behind curtains. Instead, I did something Deborah did not see coming. I wrote a letter. Not to the HOA. Not to the board. To every single homeowner in Ridgecrest Estates. Took me a whole weekend to get it right. 2 pages. Calm. Factual. No emotion. I explained that my property was not and had never been part of the HOA. I laid out what happened, the mailbox, the missing footage, the D&L hauling payments, the survey crew on my property without permission, the non-compliance notice sent to a house outside their jurisdiction. Dates. Dollar amounts. The fact that the county board had tabled the entrance project after a public review. Then I added one last paragraph. The special assessment you are being asked to pay is not to defend the HOA from a frivolous complaint. It is to cover legal costs for actions your board president took without your informed consent, actions that have put the HOA at serious legal risk. I would encourage every homeowner to ask for a full accounting of how your dues have been spent over the last 7 months before agreeing to pay anything extra. I printed 42 copies, one for every house inside the gate. Sunday morning, I walked the neighborhood and put one in each mailbox. By Sunday evening, I had 3 missed calls from numbers I did not know. By Monday morning, I had 11. The calls were not what I expected. Nobody yelled at me. The first person I called back was a woman named Sandra Chen, lived on the interior loop of Ridgecrest. She would actually been on the HOA board briefly before Deborah took over. "I read your letter," she said. "I had no idea about any of this. Those D&L hauling payments, they were never presented to us as anything related to your property." Deborah told the board it was for debris removal after the storm in January. Was there a storm in January? A small one. Some branches came down. Nothing serious. I remember thinking the bill seemed high, but I did not push it. The second call was from a guy named Tom Orlich. Lived a few houses from the gate. He did not beat around the bush. "I voted for the special assessment," he said. "Deborah told us you were threatening to sue the entire HOA and that every homeowner could be held personally liable. That is not what is happening, is it?" "I have never threatened to sue the HOA. My attorney sent a cease and desist in response to trespass on my property. That is directed at the board, not individual homeowners." Long pause. "She lied to us." "I think she told you what she needed you to believe." By Tuesday, I would talk to 9 different homeowners, and the same picture kept coming up. Deborah controlled everything. She decided what information got shared at meetings. She gave just enough detail to get a vote, but never enough for anyone to ask the right questions. Gerald backed her up on every operational thing. The other 4 board members mostly just went along because Deborah was the only one who seemed to actually know what was going on. But the letter had cracked that wide open. Wednesday, Sandra called again. 4 homeowners have filed a formal request for an emergency board meeting, she said. Under the bylaws, if 10% of the membership petitions, the board has to schedule one within 15 days. How many homeowners total? 42. So they need 5. They have got 7. I think they will have more by Friday. I thanked her and hung up. I had not asked anyone to do any of this. Did not organize a petition. Did not knock on doors making my case. I just gave them the information that Deborah had been keeping from them, and they connected the dots on their own. That is the thing about control. It only works as long as the people being controlled do not know it is happening. The emergency board meeting was set for a Thursday evening, 2 weeks after my letter went out. Community clubhouse, small building by the pool. I would never been inside it. Sandra told me the day before and asked if I wanted to come. "I am not a member," I said. "I do not think I should be there." "You are the reason this meeting is happening. People want to hear from you." They have heard from me. The letter covered everything. This part is between them and their board. I meant that. This was not my problem to fix anymore. Deborah had misused their money, made decisions behind their backs, and put their whole community at legal risk. That was between them and her. I was the guy on the other side of the gate. But yeah, I was definitely paying attention. Sandra texted me updates all evening. At 7:15. Meeting started. Full house. Every seat taken. People standing in the back. At 7:32. Deborah opened with a statement. Calm, calling the letter misleading and defamatory. Gerald backing her up. At 7:41. Tom Orlich asked for a line-by-line review of the D&L hauling payments. Deborah said it was not on the agenda. Tom said he was making it the agenda. Room backed him up. At 7:58. Gerald admitted the hauling invoices did not say what work was actually done. Said he trusted the vendor. Someone asked why a debris removal company got paid $3,200 2 days after your mailbox was destroyed. Gerald had no answer. At 8:14. Sandra formally asked if the board got legal advice before sending a non-compliance notice to a non-member property. Deborah called it a courtesy communication. Sandra read section 9.4 out loud and asked who wrote it. Dead silence. At 8:30. Motion to remove Deborah Kinney as board president. Seconded immediately. At 8:47. Vote. 31 homeowners present. 24 to remove. 5 against. 2 abstained. At 8:48, Deborah left the building. I put the phone down on the kitchen table and just stared at it. 24 to 5. Was not even close. Sandra sent one more at 9:10. New interim president elected. First motion passed unanimously. Full independent audit of HOA finances for the last 12 months. Second motion, formal apology letter to you. Third motion, rescind the special assessment. I read it twice. Put the phone down. Walked out to the back porch. The sprinklers were going on the lot behind mine. Same as always. The apology letter showed up 4 days later. Signed by Sandra as interim board president, co-signed by 3 other board members. It was professional and surprisingly honest. It acknowledged the HOA had no authority over my property. Said the non-compliance notice was sent in error and had been formally rescinded. Confirmed the entrance improvement proposal was withdrawn from the county, and it expressed regret for actions taken by prior board leadership that resulted in damage to your property and disruption to your rights as a homeowner. It was not a direct admission about the mailbox. Lawyers had obviously gone through the wording. But it came close enough that Martin said it was useful. Good letter, he said when I showed him. Does not say they did it, but does not deny it either. Combined with everything else, it makes your position a lot stronger. Position for what? For whatever you want to do next. I thought about that for a few days. Martin laid out the options. I could file a civil suit against the HOA for trespass, harassment, and property damage. I could name Deborah individually. I could go after the D&L hauling connection and try to prove the mailbox was a contracted hit. If it worked, the damages would not be life-changing money, but enough to sting. Or I could let it go. I sat with that longer than I thought I would. There is a version of this where I go all the way. Drag Deborah into court. Depose Gerald. Subpoena the hauling company's dispatch logs. Make every dollar they spent trying to take my land cost them 10 more. Part of me wanted that. The part of me that stood in his bathrobe at 6:43 in the morning looking at the wreckage of his mailbox wanted that pretty badly. But there is another part. The part that has lived on this street for 11 years and just wants to keep living here without a war going on. I called Martin on a Monday. I want to settle, I said. You sure? I want the mailbox replaced at their expense. I want a written acknowledgement that my property is outside the HOA's jurisdiction, recorded with the county clerk and attached to the plat. And I want the gate camera system audited by an independent vendor, with the results shared with me. He was quiet for a second. That is reasonable. Honestly, more than reasonable. You could get a lot more. I know, but I am not trying to win a war, Martin. I am trying to end one. The settlement took about 3 weeks. The new board did not fight it. Sandra told me later that the independent audit turned up more than just the D&L hauling stuff. Deborah had been approving expenses through Gerald without full board votes for months. Mostly small things. Vendor payments. Office supplies. A landscaping contract that went to a company her brother-in-law owned. Nothing huge on its own, but put it all together, and it painted a pretty clear picture of someone treating the HOA treasury like her personal bank account. The board cut Gerald loose. Terminated his contract with Pratt Property Solutions, hired a new management company and changed the rules so any expense over $500 needed 2 signatures. Deborah resigned her membership entirely, did not sell right away, but she stopped going to meetings, stopped walking the neighborhood in the evenings, stopped making eye contact with anyone who had voted against her. Phil told me she listed the house about 2 months later. Did it quietly. No sign in the yard. I never spoke to her again. Not once. Not even a nod. The new mailbox went in on a Saturday morning. Contractor the HOA paid for. Solid steel post painted black, my house number in reflective digits on the side. Better than the one I had before. Honestly. I watched the guy install it from the porch, and when he finished he walked over and handed me the receipt. HOA's covering it, he said. I know. The acknowledgement was recorded with the county clerk the following week. 1 page. Notarized. Stating that my lot was excluded from the Ridgecrest Estates covenant and the HOA had no enforcement authority over my property. Attached to the plat map as a permanent addendum. Martin called it the most valuable piece of paper in the whole case. It is not just understood now, he said. It is recorded. If anyone ever tries this again, new board, new president, whoever, they will find this document before they find anything else. It is over. For good. The camera audit came back 2 weeks after that. The IT vendor confirmed the system did not have a scheduled update the night my mailbox was destroyed. The footage had been manually deleted from the local drive. They could not figure out exactly who did it, but the access log showed the deletion was done using Gerald Pratt's admin credentials. I read the report in Martin's office. He watched me finish it. You could reopen this, he said. I shook my head. It is done. People ask me sometimes if I wish I would gone further, taken Deborah to court, made her pay for everything. Put it all on record in front of a judge with a dollar amount attached. I get it. That is the satisfying ending. Someone does something wrong and they get punished, publicly, with consequences you can measure. But that is not really how life works. And the truth is, Deborah paid plenty. She lost her position. She lost her credibility. She lost the trust of 42 households who gave her authority and watched her abuse it. She lost her home. Not because anyone forced her out. Because she could not stand living in a place where everyone had seen through her. That is not nothing. That is everything she built, gone. And I got what I actually needed. Not revenge. Not a check. Just certainty. A recorded document that says this is my property and nobody gets to touch it. A camera system watching my lot around the clock. And a neighborhood that finally understands where the line is. The first few months after the settlement were a little awkward. People did not really know how to act around me. Some of the neighbors who had given me the cold shoulder during Deborah's little campaign seemed embarrassed about it. A few made small gestures. A wave here. A nod there. Someone left a bag of tomatoes from their garden on my porch one morning. No note. Phil was the first one to just be normal again. Came over one evening while I was replacing a fence post. Leaned on the rail like nothing had ever happened. Need a hand with that? He said. I am good. He stood there anyway, watching me work. After a minute he said, You handled that whole thing better than most people would have. I just did not want to lose my yard, Phil. He laughed, short and real. Well, you did not. No, I did not. I still live in the same house. Still mow my lawn on Saturdays. Still have my coffee on the porch in the mornings. The mailbox is black now instead of red, and there are 4 cameras where there used to be none, but other than that, things look the same. The gate at the end of Ridgecrest Lane still opens and closes 100 times a day. The sprinklers still run on the lot behind mine. The neighborhood keeps going the way neighborhoods do. Slowly. Quietly. One season into the next. And my house is right where it has always been. At the mouth of the road. Outside the gate. On my land. Exactly where it belongs.
That's the story of Dale, a chainsaw on his ranch one Tuesday morning and $400,000 in his pocket by the end of it. But the real takeaway is not the money, it's the lesson. Your property is only as safe as your documentation. A deed is a drawer, does not protect you. What protects you is a survey, a paper trail, and the willingness at the moment. Someone challenge your boundaries. If you know a property, a house, a lot, a range, anything, know where your lines are. Keep a license survey on files, and if someone ever show up telling you your land is not yours, do not argue calls. The police calls an authority document everything. The law is built to protect you, but only if you use it. This has we actually tales, names and details in this story are fictionalized, but the legal principle and case law referenced are real and are verified. This is not legal advice. If you are facing a property dispute, talk to a licensed authority in your state. If you are got an actual horror story, drop it in the comment. Your story might be the next one we tell. And if this is your first time here, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the